on some level, I don't know that we're paying enough attention to the fact that there's a future Hall of Famer that arrived in Ashburn this offseason in Bobby Wagner. There is a Super Bowl winner, a multi-time Pro Bowler in Zach Ertz that arrived in Ashburn. There's a dude for at least a fantasy perspective was arguably the best running back in football for a few seasons, and Eckler's got to have a couple Pro Bowls on his resume. Like you bring like in any other year where you didn't have new owner, new coach, new GM, new quarterback, you bring in Wagner, Ekeler, Ertz would be the talk of the town. And I just think we got to at least focus on that in late May.
Yeah, I mean, I think Austin Ekeler might be the most under the radar veteran that's come to Washington in who knows how long. I mean, we talk about Bobby Wagner a little bit. We've talked about Zach Ertz, and maybe it's the fact that, those guys' production on the field has spanned, more than a decade or so. And we've seen those guys, excel in major offenses or major offensive defenses that were pertained directly to the Commanders, whereas Austin Eckler's largely been out in San Diego, hasn't done it. The Commanders don't play out there, or LA, the Commanders don't play out there very often. But I think what he brings to the table is going to be so impressive for this group. I think the veteran leadership is an important piece of it. And you have guys like Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz who are going to be more vocal about it. But then you also have guys like Austin Ekeler who are, follow me, watch what I do on the field. And as they're going through their drills at practices, you see, the coaches stop and point out, hey, look what Eck is doing. He's chopping his feet at the sideline. He's keeping the ball in bounds. He's extending over the goal line. He's doing all the little things that in OTAs, don't mean much. But when you set that standard early, it can help set that standard for the season.
Well, and I agree with you. And to be fair, though, Eckler and Ertz are coming off injury problems, subpar seasons. So that's probably a reason why the excitement's a little decreased. And Wagner has been playing a long time and is coming off. I mean, I think he had certainly 100 plus tackles. I want to say it was like 140 or something.
Yeah.
But, there is a reasonable belief that maybe we're not getting the best out of these guys. But when you hear them talk about the chip on their shoulder to try to deliver still, it's at least an intriguing possibility. Let's hear these guys talk, particularly Wagner, about what they can bring to the table.
Just share your scars. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing. Like a lot of things that you can't learn from youth, you can learn from experience. So people that can, give that knowledge and give that insight, things that I did my rookie year, my second year, third year, try to have you avoid some of those mistakes. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
I think the biggest thing with leadership is just being a genuine person. So I don't think for me, I had to go out there and try to be something I'm not. I'm always passionate, so I'm just going to try to bring my passion to work every day, work really hard, and try to lead by example. And if I need to speak, I'll speak when I have to. But for the most part, just trying to be present and just lead by example.
Sorry to hammer the leadership thing, but
no, it's one of my favorite topics, so bring it.
You guys as coaches can lead the way that you do and set the tone and culture and all those different things. How important is it to have locker room leaders, and what can that do for a team having kind of those veterans who can stand up in a locker room and say what needs to be said?
Yeah, the very best teams I've been a part of were really strong in the locker room first, and those standards that they create together, to me, that's where the gold is. And so having ways to hold each other accountable, to push one another, to challenge one another, and that's what really being a great teammate is all about. Sometimes you're the mentor, sometimes you're the mentee, and it doesn't have to be young to old always either.
All right, so you heard from three people there. The head coach, Dan Quinn, obviously, and then Wagner, who's probably a Hall of Famer, John Allen, who's at least on a Ring of Honor sort of track here in Washington. But, Big Man, this is something you have talked about over and over and over again, is internal leadership from the team, where it's not up to coaches. It's not anything outside of that locker room. That guys have to be willing to voice what's right and certainly what's wrong. Where do you think they've gotten to trying to recalibrate that?
I think already you can kind of feel that there's a big upgrade there, and it starts with listening to what John Allen said right there in the soundbite that you heard. That was a guy who was asked to do a lot more than he's comfortable doing in terms of leadership. He was one of the best players, maybe the best player on the team, and there's an expectation that the best player is going to be a leader. But John isn't a vocal leader. He's not a guy that wants to stand up in the locker room, do the huddles pregame, all these different things. He's a, do as I do, watch what I do, and I want you to give the same effort and the same, try that I give. And I think you can already see John feeling a little more relaxed from that leadership role with these other guys already in the building. And the fact that Dan Quinn has made such a strong point about the importance of leadership and veteran player leadership, I think shows you how differently he looks at this roster and how he looks at kind of leadership as a whole in this group, different than what kind of Ron Rivera did.
Yeah, and I think one big thing you see with Dan Quinn that you didn't necessarily see with Ron, Quinn is not scared to bring people in that could perhaps cast a brighter star than him. You know what I mean? Like Cliff Kingsbury at one point was like people's sexiest man alive. You know what I mean?
He's a supernova.
Dude, you bring in Kingsbury, if it goes well, he gets another job. And then you start bringing in these types of players where, frankly, I think this year is just a whole lot of Band-Aids. I think that's why it's a lot of people on one-year deals. But, like, they're not scared at all to push the envelope rather than trying to slow build over 4 years, blah, blah, blah. Like, I still don't know that they're going to be that good, but I do think they're trying to improve as fast as they can, even while recognizing there's probably like a brick by brick build necessary.